Well, thank you very much, Jeannie, and good afternoon, everyone, or I should say good morning. My name is Jon Schreibfeder. I'm president of a company called Effective Inventory Management. Our goal is to help you make the most out of your inventory to achieve what we call the goal of effective inventory management. There you see the goal in front of you. This is what we think you are trying to do with your inventory. First of all, to meet or exceed customers' expectations of product availability. And, of course, we want to do that with the amount of each item that is either going to help you maximize your net profits or minimize your total inventory investment. Now, it is possible to meet or exceed your customers' expectations of product availability. That is to have what your customers want on the shelf at all times, but not maximize your profitability. I just want to show you what I mean by this. All of you probably have computer systems that will support what we call replenishment parameters. Replenishment parameters help you decide when to order products and how much to buy. When you order products, when you decide to replenish stock, controls what we call customer service or product availability, making sure you have what your customers want when they want it. If you, for example, were selling 2 pieces of an item, okay, say you were selling 2 pieces of an item every day, and the anticipated lead time was 7 days, meaning it took you 7 days to get a replenishment shipment of the product in from the vendor. Well, 2 pieces times 7 days is 14 pieces. If we ordered the item when we had 14 pieces left in inventory, left on the shelf in your store or warehouse, we would be receiving the replenishment shipment in as you were selling the last piece. The anticipated lead time demand is represented in the graph in front of you in that area in yellow. Demand per day times the anticipated lead time days. Okay? Sometimes we might sell more than we forecast, or we might even have a delay in receiving a replenishment shipment from the vendor. That's why we maintain safety stock or reserve inventory, that area in green. Okay? So we have safety stock, we have anticipated lead time demand. The other area that you see in blue is what we call demand during your order cycle. Okay. Say you could only order a product from a vendor say you could only order from a vendor every 2 weeks. Okay? Every 2 weeks we could place an order with the vendor. That means we have to order at least a 2-week supply at a time from the vendor.
All participants have been muted.
In fact, we add that order cycle demand to our anticipated lead time demand and safety stock to get what we call the line point. Okay, the line point represents that, let's say, order up to level. That if you continually order up to the line point, you will achieve great customer service. You will have on hand, in the vast majority of instances, what your customers want when you want them. We call this your maintenance inventory. But just always ordering up to the line point, just ordering what you need to maintain your customer service between receiving replenishment shipments may not cause you to maximize your profitability. Okay? Why? Because you're going to have increased warehousing costs. Material's going to be flowing in and out of your warehouse continually. Administrative costs as you buy continually. You also won't be able to take advantage of those offers by the vendor where you're going to get a lower cost for buying a larger quantity. Okay. So here we want to go on to our second phase of the goal of effective inventory management. How do we maximize your company's profitability? buy it to achieve that lowest cost, to get the prepaid freight continually, to get the extra 5 or 10% discount, to get that extended terms or terms discount. We're always going to buy the largest possible quantity to get the lowest possible cost. Well, I want you to understand that buying at the lowest possible unit cost, the lowest price per piece that your vendors are going to offer you, does not always, often it does not at all result in maximum profitability. Okay? You have to consider several factors. Don't fall into the fallacy of what we call potential profits. If we build or buy a lot, we will minimize our cost per unit and maximize our profitability. Understand that profits are never realized until you sell the material to an end user. The material in your warehouse has the potential to earn profits, but they don't actually earn profits until you sell the material, until you receive payment. Cash and inventory are not equal assets. Okay? If you have cash, you can take that cash and use it in multiple ways. You can buy all sorts of inventory with that cash. You can use that cash to pay people, to expand your facilities. But once you invest that cash in specific inventory items, once you invest it, that money is, we use the appropriate term, sunk. You're not going to earn a profit. You can't reuse that inventory until you sell the product. If you buy a ton of product to get the lowest unit cost, okay, you're buying a lot of product to get the lowest unit cost, the lowest cost per piece. If it takes you 10 or 12 years to sell that inventory, you, I guarantee you, are going to lose money. Even if it takes you a year to sell that material, I am almost willing to guarantee you that you are going to be losing money. What we are going to do this afternoon is look at how you can achieve the lowest, what we call total cost of inventory. We're going to look at several things. We're going to look at something called the economic order quantity. We're going to look at evaluating vendors' price breaks. We'll be looking at, as Jeannie said, terms given discounts, extended dating, free freight, and some other issues. So let's get started. When we look at the total cost of inventory, this is the total cost that you incur when you buy and sell a product. This is the cost that you need to use to figure out your profitability. You're looking at three elements that you see on this slide. You're looking at the cost of the material. This is what you pay the vendor, plus any other charges associated with a specific shipment. Freight, customs duties are all part of the cost of the material. You have the cost of replenishing inventory, your cost of issuing and receiving a purchase order line item from the vendor. How much does it cost you to buy? How much does it cost you to process the receiving paperwork? How much does it cost you to pay the vendor? Finally, we have the third cost, our carrying cost of inventory. How much does it cost you to maintain material in your warehouse before it can be sold or used? All three costs added up equal your total cost of inventory. Now, I want to look at the cost of replenishing inventory and the carrying cost in a little more detail. Okay. What is involved in replenishing inventory? Well, it's your cost of deciding what products need to be replenished, your cost of issuing a purchase order, expediting that purchase order if you have to, processing the receiving paperwork, paying the vendor. All of these elements added up equal your cost of replenishing inventory. We often call this the R cost. Okay? It's calculated by taking the total annual cost of all of your ordering activities, all of the costs that you see listed here, your cost of buyers, material supplies, you're receiving people's salaries, your accounts payable people, all those costs divided by the number of purchase order line items for stock products issued in the past 12 months. How many items did you buy? Now, I am not talking about how many pieces did you buy, how many line items did you buy? How many times did you buy a product regardless of the actual quantity sold? For a lot of you, your cost of replenishing inventory will be somewhere between $5 and $6 per line item on a purchase order. Okay. If you have a fine line purchase order, you're buying 5 items, your cost is going to be somewhere between $25 and $30. But notice I'm saying this cost is per line item. We believe it costs you exactly the same amount to buy a product regardless of the quantity you actually buy. Your buyers go through exactly the same thought process when they buy a product, whether they buy 1 piece, 10 pieces, or 1,000 pieces of that product. So if we translate this cost per line item and actually apportion that out per piece, we see that the cost per piece decreases rapidly the more we buy. Look at the chart that you see on this slide. If we had a cost of replenishing inventory of, say, $5 per line item, if we buy 1 piece, that piece has to absorb the entire $5. Okay? You can see the quantity ordered of $5. That top circle recognizes that 1 piece has to absorb the entire $5 cost. But if we order 5 pieces, okay, we still have that $5 cost per line item of buying the product. If we buy 5 pieces, each piece only has to absorb $1 of that $5 total charge. You're going to see your cost of replenishing inventory decreases rapidly the more you buy. If you're typically buying 50, 100, 500 pieces of an item, you will probably see that your cost of replenishing inventory is very, very, very small. Maybe a half cent per piece, something like that, or maybe even less. So, the cost of replenishing inventory suggests if we're going to buy the product, buy a lot of it to minimize this element of the total cost of inventory. As long as you're buying it, buy a ton of it. Unfortunately, the carrying cost, that third element in our total cost equation, the carrying cost behaves in exactly the opposite fashion. As we're going to see, the more you buy, the higher your carrying cost is going to be. Basically because the more you buy, the longer part of that shipment will remain in your warehouse. And as long as any part of that shipment remains in the warehouse, it will have to absorb some of your warehousing costs. What are those costs? Well, we have the cost of actually putting away the stock receipts once you receive the material, moving that material around within your warehouse, maybe taking it from bulk stock and putting it in a primary or picking location, insuring that inventory. In some states, we have taxes and other charges on inventory. If you have any charge that is directly related to the value or the amount of inventory that you maintain, it is a part of your carrying cost. The rent and utilities for the portion of your warehouse used to store material. The more material you have, the bigger warehouse you need. You might say, oh, well, our warehouse is a fixed expense. Well, you still have to pay those bills. And we want to be sure that we fill that warehouse with the inventory that is not only what your customers want, but the inventory that is going to make you the most profit. You cannot put 2 pieces in the same space in your warehouse. You can't put 2 items in the same space in your warehouse. So if we're going to continue going to consider the rent utilities for the portion of your warehouse used to store material as part of your carrying cost. Physical inventory and cycle counting, part of your carrying cost. Why? Well, let's put it this way. If you don't buy it, you don't have to count it. The more inventory you have, the longer it takes to count those products. Make sure that that material stays in saleable or usable condition. Which brings up our next element, inventory shrinkage and obsolescence. This is for most distributors the biggest element of the carrying cost. In these days of relatively low interest rates, it's no longer the cost of money. It is the risk that the inventory that you buy cannot be sold or used. You might say, oh, we don't have that risk. Well, if you don't, you are unique. We just looked at one client's inventory. 60% of their inventory dollars were invested in more than 1 year's supply of the products in their warehouse. Over a year's supply. A lot of that was dead. No sales in the past 12 months. We have to assess the risk of whatever you buy will in fact become dead inventory. That's part of your carrying cost. Finally, the opportunity cost of the money invested in inventory. What could that money earn if it were invested elsewhere? Or, if you are financing your inventory, what is the interest expense on the money that is invested in inventory? All of these costs added up and divided by your average inventory investment. These costs added up, divided by your average inventory investment, equal your carrying cost. Okay? This is usually expressed as a percentage. Okay? It's going to be somewhere in North America right now, should be somewhere between 16 and 23% per year. What that means is all of these factors added up, divided by your average inventory investment, it's costing you somewhere between 16 and 23 cents to maintain an item, 16 and 23 cents to maintain $1 worth of inventory, to maintain $1 worth of inventory in your warehouse for an entire year. Okay? As the cost of, I got ahead of myself. It is critical, it is very critical that each and every one of you know what it costs you to maintain inventory in your warehouses. And you have to know if those costs are reasonable. We have a free service offered from our website, www.effectiveinventory.com. You can see on the left-hand side of the title page, home page, a little button that says carrying cost. If you click that button, we will provide you with a questionnaire allowing you to calculate your carrying cost. And, very importantly, we will tell you if your carrying costs are high, low, or just right for someone in your industry, in your geographic region. Now, I'm spending a lot of time on the cost of carrying inventory because this is going to be a vital factor in assessing vendor price breaks. As I said before, the more you buy, the higher the carrying cost. Notice the dotted red line going from the left up to the right is our carrying cost, or K cost curve. Why does the carrying cost increase? Because the more you buy, the longer part of that shipment will remain in your warehouse. And as long as part of any shipment remains in your warehouse, it is, I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. Excuse me for 1 second. There we go. As long as part of that shipment remains in your warehouse, it is absorbing these elements of the carrying cost like a sponge. You have to count it. It's subject to shrinkage, obsolescence. Your money is tied up. So that carrying cost is going to increase the more you buy. Now, if we add the incoming cost, the cost of the material involved including freight, customs duties, what have you. To our chart, we get this green total cost curve. I would suggest to you to maximize your profitability. You want to buy where that total cost is at its lowest point. In 1904, a gentleman by the name of Camp came up with a mathematical formula that consistently and reliably tells us what is that lowest total cost quantity. We call that the economic order quantity. This is the original version of the economic order quantity formula dating back to 1904. That's what, 106 years ago. The square root of 2 times the cost of replenishing inventory times the annual demand of a product divided by the carrying cost percentage times the unit or replacement cost per piece. Okay, that looks complicated. This formula was replaced in most systems by most customers about 60 years ago with a version of the economic order quantity formula that also looks kind of complicated, but instead of annual demand, it deals with monthly demand. Okay? Why? Because demand for products varies month to month throughout the year. This is the version of the EOQ formula that is found in most computer systems today. It's not the only version. Some versions deal with daily demand. Some versions deal with weekly demand. Some versions deal with demand per business day. But the nicest thing about this is that in today's world, we have computer systems that can do these calculations. You don't have to. You don't have to memorize this formula, but you desperately, as a good buyer, have to understand the meaning behind the EOQ formula. You have to be able to interpret the results of this formula. In order to do this, I want to show you 3 examples. In the first example, I have a product where I have a forecast demand of 25 pieces per month. I'm selling 25 pieces of this item per month. It has a unit cost of $10. It costs $10 per piece. That's my cost of material, including freight. Some of you may call it a landed cost. The replenishment cost is $5 per line item. The carrying cost is 20% per year, meaning it costs me 20 cents to maintain $1 worth of inventory in my warehouse for an entire year. I plug these numbers into the formula. I get an EOQ of 38.7, which I will round to 39 pieces. Now, again, I don't care if you can do this math. I just want you to be able to interpret the results of the formula. If I am buying 39 pieces and I am selling or using 25 pieces per month, that is about a 46-day supply. I express purchase quantities. Actually, I express all on-hand quantities, all quantities in every inventory system as a number of days supply. Why? Because everyone in an organization can understand the concept between days supply of inventory. I have 5 days supply. I have 14 days supply. I have 60 days supply of inventory. That is much more meaningful than saying I have 5 pieces or 10 pieces or 10,000 pieces. Why? Because I have no idea how long 10,000 pieces is going to last. If I'm selling 10,000 pieces per day, 10,000 pieces will last for 1 day. But if I only sell 1 piece per day, 10,000 pieces will last for the rest of my lifetime. We want to express inventory in terms of days supply. This first example, I'm buying a 46-day supply. Let's look at another example. Here, I'm still selling the same amount per month, 25 pieces, but instead of a unit cost of $10, I have a unit cost of $50. times more expensive than the first item. I am going to put these numbers into my EOQ, my economic order quantity equation, and I get an economic order quantity of 17.3, which I will round to 17 pieces, which equates to a 20-day supply. Remember, I'm selling 25 pieces per month, so a 17-piece quantity, 17 pieces of the product will last for about 20 days. Now, what was the difference between that first and that second item? Well, you might say the unit cost. The first item was $10. The second item was $50. But you're going to see in this third example that the economic order quantity, that quantity that's going to produce the biggest profit, doesn't vary by the unit cost, the cost per piece of the item. Let's look at our third example now. The unit cost is not $10, not $50, but it is 10 cents. Okay? This item is very inexpensive. It costs 10 cents. But instead of 25 pieces per month, I'm going to sell 2,500 pieces per month. That's my forecast. You can see that the EOQ, after we plug all these numbers into our equation, comes out to be 3,873 pieces. Okay, 3,873 pieces, if I am selling 2,500 pieces per month, is a 46-day supply. Now, remember that first example where I was buying a 46-day supply when the unit cost was $10? Well, I am buying the same number of days supply when the unit cost is 10 cents. Why? Because the economic order quantity does not vary by the unit cost of the item. It does vary by what I am going to call dollars moving through inventory. That is the forecast demand times the unit cost. In the third example, I had 2,500 times 10 cents, or $250, moving through inventory, moving through my warehouse per month. In that first example, I had a forecast demand of 25 pieces and a unit cost of $10. $250 again, moving through my inventory per month. Okay? $250 moving through inventory, moving through my warehouse per month. I am going to buy a 46-day supply. Why did I only buy a 17-day supply in that second example? Well, I had a 25-piece forecast demand. I'm selling or using 25 pieces per month, but the unit cost is $50. 25 times 50 is $1,250. Okay? $1,250, as opposed to, in the other two examples, $250 moving through inventory per month. If you have more dollars moving through inventory per month, if you are investing more in inventory, you want to bring in smaller quantities more often. In other words, you want to push the turnover of these products. If you have a lot of dollars moving through inventory per month, regardless of the actual forecast or the actual unit cost, if you have, multiplying those two together, a lot of dollars moving through inventory per month, the EOQ will suggest you buy smaller quantities more often to maximize the performance of those inventory dollars. If you have fewer dollars moving through inventory per month, maybe a low-cost item that doesn't sell that often, the EOQ will do exactly the opposite. It will suggest you bring in larger quantities less often, because the cost of replenishing inventory actually is going to be higher than your cost of carrying inventory. It's going to cost you more to issue that purchase order than the cost of maintaining the shipment in your warehouse. The economic order quantity is always going to give you the lowest total cost quantity. It will always, 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 always help you maximize your profitability. It's going to lead you right there. Good computer systems will always ensure that the economic order quantity will bring you up or above that thing that I called the line point a few minutes ago. Your stock level, or what I'm calling here your replenishment position, is going to be forced up above that line point. You don't have to worry about customer service. That's a given. And I guess you could basically say we want to ensure that we maintain our desired level of customer service, but after we do that, we want to make the most often. The economic order quantity will always maximize your profitability. Now, sometimes that's not going to be a realistic business decision. Okay, what would happen if you had a very slow-moving, low-cost item? Maybe an item that costs 6 cents and you only sold 3 or 4 per month. That's 12 cents, 20 cents moving through inventory. Very little money. The EOQ equation will suggest, because of the high cost of replenishing inventory compared to the cost of carrying inventory, you should bring in a 4 or 5 year supply. Well, if you bring in more than a year's supply of any product, your risk of obsolescence is going to start increasing exponentially. This is why we never want to bring in more than, say, a 6 or 12-month supply of a product, regardless of what the EOQ equation says. So we're going to put an upper limit in terms of days supply. Notice I'm using days supply again on the EOQ. Okay? You also might have a very fast-moving, high-cost item. So high cost, in fact, so fast-moving that the EOQ suggests you bring in less than a day's supply. Well, you might not find it practical to bring in less than a day's supply of inventory. So you might increase the EOQ, say, to equal 25% of your monthly forecast, or a 7-day supply. We want to set our limits there. Okay? We want to increase the EOQ to equal demand during the order cycle. We want to be absolutely sure that the economic order quantity at least brings us up to that line point to protect customer service. We don't want to order less than a 2-week supply of a product if we can only order every 2 weeks. Finally, we want to limit the EOQ to the shelf life of the item. If a product only has a 1-month practical shelf life, I never want to order more than a 30-day supply of that product. What do I say by a practical shelf life? Well, this isn't the absolute shelf life. This is a practical shelf life. We normally set the practical shelf life equal to half the actual shelf life of the product. Okay. Why? Because we found that customers typically don't want to buy a product today that expires tomorrow. Think about going to the grocery store on your way home tonight and buying a gallon of milk. Do you really want a gallon of milk in your grocery cart that expires tomorrow, July 31st? No, you're probably going to reach for another gallon from a newer shipment. So we want to limit the EOQ to that shelf life, to the practical shelf life, I should say, of the product. Now, the economic order quantity is going to provide the lowest total cost of an item in your inventory. But you might have to round that vendor's package, the quantity that you can buy from the vendor, to a multiple. You might have to round the EOQ. You might have to round the EOQ up to a multiple of the quantity that you can buy from the vendor. Okay. If the EOQ comes out to be, say, 12 pieces, and the vendor will only sell you the product in a package of 25, you want to buy 12. The vendor is forcing you to buy 25. The difference between vendor package in the EOQ is something that we call planned excess. It is what you have to buy above that lowest total cost quantity. If this is an issue that you face continually, where you want to buy a smaller quantity, but the vendor's only willing to sell you a certain amount of each item, we suggest you calculate the difference and produce a report in descending order by the value of planned excess, by the value of what you have to buy above what the vendor is willing to sell you. Look at those items and decide, are we willing to invest more money in buying a larger quantity of these products, a quantity above what's going to maximize your profitability? Now, some people don't like the economic order quantity formula. They don't like the results that the economic order quantity formula produces. Well, they're probably using a bad version of the economic order quantity formula. They don't know what their cost of replenishing inventory is. So they replace the cost of replenishing inventory with a bad guess. You see that in the numerator of this equation. They don't know what their forecast demand is. They don't have a good indication of what their customers are going to buy or use in the future. So instead of a good demand forecast, they use just a simple average of what they've sold in the past, what they call a usage rate. They have no idea what it costs to maintain inventory in their warehouse. They don't know what their carrying cost is, so they replace it with a rule of thumb. Please go to our website. Let us help you calculate your carrying costs and other factors. You will get good results out of that economic order quantity formula. Now, as I said, there are multiple versions of the economic order quantity formula. One of those versions allows us to see what we should do with a vendor. Not only let's say when a vendor offers us several opportunities to buy a product. In this situation, the vendor is offering me 3 opportunities to buy a product. I could buy 100 pieces at $9.50, 500 at $9.25, and 1,000 pieces, I could buy 1,000 pieces at $9 each. Now, which of those quantities am I going to buy? Well, I have to look at what is my cost of the material, what is my cost of replenishing inventory, and what is my carrying cost. Let's start with the cost of replenishing the material. Well, in order to calculate that cost of replenishing inventory, first thing I have to know is how long is it going to take me to sell the product? Well, you see on this slide, my monthly demand is 150 pieces. 12 times 150 is what? 1,800 pieces a year. Okay? If I'm selling 1,800 pieces a year, if I buy 100 pieces, I have to buy this item 18 times. 18 times 100 is 1,800 pieces. If I buy 500 pieces at a time, I only have to replenish my inventory 3.6 times a year. 3.6 times 500, again, is 1,800. If I buy 1,000 pieces at a time, okay, selling 1,800 a year, I only have to buy this item 1.8 times a year. 1.8 times 1,000, 1,800. If it costs me $5 to buy this product, keep in mind that is regardless of the quantity I'm actually buying. Every time I put this item on a purchase order, it costs me $5. Well, if I buy it 18 times a year, 18 times 5 is $90. But if I buy 1,000 pieces at a time, 1.8 times $5, because I only have to buy it 1.8 times a year, times $5 is $9. So you can see, if I buy more, I have to buy it less often, and my total annual cost of replenishing inventory goes down. If I apportion that cost out per piece, you can see, as we saw on that chart a few slides ago, the more I buy, the lower the cost of replenishing inventory per piece. But as I said before, unfortunately, the cost of carrying that inventory is going to be greater the more I buy. If I buy 100 pieces at a time, okay? If you remember from the previous slide, 100 pieces will cost $9.50 each. So I am going to have to write a check for 900, oops, sorry about that, wrong way. I'm going to have to write a check for $950. If I buy 500 pieces, okay, I'm getting them at $9.25, I'm going to have to write a check for $46.25, 1,000 pieces. I'm going to have to write a check for $9,000. Now, to calculate my cost of carrying inventory per piece, I am going to take the average inventory value during the time it takes to sell each of those quantities. The average inventory value during the time it takes to sell half of those quantities will be half of the incoming cost. Why? Because if I bring in $950 worth of inventory during the time it takes me to sell all $950, half the time I will have more than half that amount or more than $475. Half the time I will have less than $475. I am going to take that average inventory value times the month supply of inventory I'm buying, or we could express it as day supply. Here I'm expressing it as month supply. If I'm selling 150 per month, 100 pieces is 2/3 or 0.67 of a month's supply. 500 pieces, if my demand is 150 pieces per month, 500 pieces is 3 1/3 month supply. 1,000 pieces is 6 2/3 month supply. Okay? If I take the average inventory value times the month supply times a monthly carrying cost, that's going to be my annual carrying cost divided by 12. I will get the total cost that I will incur, the total carrying cost that I will incur during the time it takes me to sell the entire quantity. Look how that carrying cost increases dramatically the more I buy. If I'm buying 2/3 of a month's supply, the total carrying cost is only $5.54. But if I buy 1,000 pieces, 10 times as much, the carrying cost doesn't go up by a factor of 10. It literally goes up by close to a factor of 100. The total carrying cost is $525. Why? Because my money's tied up, space is tied up, but more importantly than anything else, the risk of shrinkage, obsolescence, that inventory becoming dead stock increases dramatically. If I take that total carrying cost, divide it by the quantity I'm buying at each of these three levels, I get the carrying cost per piece of inventory that I will incur during the time it takes to sell the entire quantity. If I add the cost per piece to the replenishment cost per piece and then add the carrying cost per piece, I will get the total cost of inventory per piece. No matter what I sell the item for, I want to minimize that total cost of inventory per piece. I want to buy either the 500 quantity or the 1,000 piece quantity. I will tend to always go for the smaller of the two if the total cost is equal, because I have money in a liquid form, meaning more money in a liquid form. I can invest it in many different things, including other products. Okay? I will tend to go with a lower quantity because you might say it maintains the utmost in flexibility. Now, I am hearing more and more and more from customers that their vendors are offering them extended terms, longer to pay for an invoice. Let's say a vendor offers you 90 days to pay rather than 30 days. That sounds like a tremendous deal. But any offer, any consideration, any discount the vendor gives you has to be translated into a dollar discount. What is the dollar discount associated with 90-day terms, paying in 90 days rather than 30 days? Well, the actual dollar discount is the free money for 60 days. Okay? What you would incur in interest expense if you were to borrow money for 60 days. Let's say you could borrow money at 6% per month, per year, a 6% annual rate. You could get those terms from your bank. Well, 6% divided by 12 months is about 0.5% per month. That's what you're paying in interest, 0.5% per month. If the vendor's willing to give that to you, that's the return on your money, 0.5% per month. If you can pay for the shipment in 90 days rather than 30 days, you're getting that free money for 60 days, but that translates into a 1% discount. Now ask yourself, what sounds better? 90-day terms or a 1% discount? Well, the 90-day terms sound better. That's why the vendors offer it to you. But keep in mind that extended payment terms have to be translated into a dollar discount. We're going to look at a couple more instances of translating things into dollar discounts. What happens if a vendor offers you a terms discount? Terms discounts are when the vendor gives you a discount for paying early. Terms discounts are getting rarer and rarer, and I will explain why in a second. But I'm going to tell you categorically, if a vendor offers you a terms discount, if they offer you a percentage off on an invoice for paying sooner, always, always, always take advantage of it. A 2%, 10 days, net 30-day terms discount. Translated, that means you have a 2% discount off the total invoice if you pay in 10 days rather than 30 days, which is the net value, the net terms for that invoice. What does this mean? Well, the vendor's willing to give you a 2% return for you giving them money for 20 days. 2% for 20 days. Okay? Let's annualize that 2% for 20 days. If you do that, that equals a 36.5% annual return. I don't know many investments where I can get a 36.5% annual return. I always take advantage of terms discounts, even if it's only 1% 10 days, net 30. You're getting a 1% discount off of the value of the invoice if you pay in 10 days rather than 30 days. If you give the vendor money for 20 days, he's going to give you a 1% discount. 1% over 20 days. Well, that's the equivalent of 18.3% over 365 days. And I don't know many places where I can get a 36.5% discount. I know a few places as well where I can get an 18.3% annual return on my money. Okay. Always, always, always take advantage of terms discounts. But keep in mind, whenever a vendor offers you any considerations, ask yourself, does the additional discount for buying a larger quantity outweigh the cost of carrying inventory for a longer period of time? Jeannie said she would distribute these slides. Take them. Use them. Ask us questions about how to apply them. Okay. Understand that any consideration, payment terms, discounts will affect profitability, and you want it to affect profitability in the right direction. How much is free freight worth? Well, I had this discussion with one of our California clients a couple of weeks ago. Their buyers always bought under the conditions of getting free freight. Unfortunately, they had to buy for certain vendors so much inventory that the cost of carrying inventory for an extended period of time was a lot more than the cost of paying the freight would have been. Free freight is a discount equal to what the freight charges would be if you had to buy from the vendor. Keep that in mind. Every consideration, free freight, free goods, anything, is going to be equal to a dollar discount. If you can figure out that dollar discount, you can compare it to your cost of carrying inventory, and you can figure out what is going to result in your best bang for the buck, your maximum profitability. Now, if you are in a situation where you have to maximize cash flow, where you don't have a lot of money to invest, be very careful. Evaluate every vendor offer and put your money where it's going to make you the most profit. I went through this with a customer about 2 weeks ago. Okay? Their buyers were taking advantage of every vendor offer where they could buy a larger amount and get a lower price, even where the vendor's discount outweighed the cost of carrying inventory. It wasn't necessarily a good deal. Why? Because my customer didn't have the cash to take advantage of all of these opportunities. And I said, if you only have limited cash to take advantage of vendor opportunities, make sure you evaluate all opportunities and only take advantage of the best ones. Only take advantage where you stand the chance of making the biggest profit. Understand that as long as you keep ordering, your order cycle's worth at a minimum, meaning if you can replenish stock every week, you're ordering at least a week's supply, and you're ordering it when you have enough to last during that anticipated lead time, and maybe you have a little safety stock buffer as well, you will not harm customer service. Once you cover your strategic needs of purchasing, everything else is what we call your speculative balance. If you manage your speculative inventory investment well, you will maximize your profits while meeting or exceeding your customers' expectations. I hope this afternoon you've learned something. And Jeannie, I'm going to turn this back over to you